She was a Caribbean beauty ready for the good life.
She wanted to come to the United States to seek out the American dream.
And he was the man who could make all of her dreams come true.
He was a very attractive guy, and he was in the military.
They appeared to be on a path full of promise until they veered off on a highway to hell.
I called 911. I told him there was a person on my porch that had been carjacked.
She was stabbed multiple times.
The crime ignited a murder investigation that plays like a Hollywood horror film.
She was killed in a field like a pig. Her dream had now turned into a Freddy Krueger nightmare.
Jaws drop as detectives uncover a real-life story filled with lust, greed, and betrayal.
I have never seen a case this strange and this weird. You just can't make this up.
Friday, June 5th, 2009, 5:45 a.m. It's a peaceful morning in the town of Crumpton, Maryland, when local resident John Rolfe and his wife Kim are suddenly awoken by a loud noise.
Help!
I heard a knock at the front door. I peeked out the window.
Please! I need to use your phone. Help, please!
I seen this guy standing there, and he looked terrible. It looked like he had been beaten pretty bad.
I need to use your phone. Please, help. Please.
Sit down, man. Sit down. What happened?
He says he was carjacked. He needs help.
He had a big gash on his arm. He said the guy that had carjacked him had went after him with a knife.
I just need help, please.
But the most nightmarish part is still to come. The man says that he isn't the only victim.
My wife's still down there.
John and his wife immediately call 911.
I told him, you need to bring an ambulance and police.
Yeah, he's cut up pretty bad. He's got a big gash on his arm.
He was just shivering uncontrollably. I never seen nobody like that.
First responders arrive on the scene within minutes and discover that the man is 28-year-old Ryan Holness. He tells them that he and his wife, Sarika, were carjacked around 11:30 p.m. the night before in New Jersey while en route to Maryland.
I told the two paramedics that Ryan Holness's wife was down in the soybean field, and Ryan said that she wasn't moving.
I'll go check on that if you want to wait here. You want to come with me? We'll go look for his wife.
They went down there to find her.
Minutes later, the two AMTs return from the nearby field.
I asked him, is she all right? And he said, no. That's when I knew it was bad.
But it's much worse than anyone could imagine. Sarika is dead.
She's just lying in the field dead, stabbed multiple times.
The tragic news sends Ryan's world spinning.
When he learned that she was dead, he totally fell apart. He was exceptionally distraught, totally confused.
As Ryan is taken to the hospital for treatment, it seems impossible to believe that this young couple's future had been altered so tragically. Born in 1982, Sarika Dunkley, or Susie as her friends called her, was raised by her aunt on the island of Jamaica.
I didn't have any child at the time, so I would take the responsibility of sending her to school.
After high school, Sarika landed a job as a cashier in a neighborhood pharmacy. Even though she was quiet and shy, Sarika stood out in a crowd.
She was a very pretty girl, and she did get a lot of attention.
Sarika might have had her choice of men, but one day in 2003, she reconnected with someone from her past who'd always brought a smile to her face. Childhood friend Ryan Holness.
They were very, very close in Jamaica. They grew up, they were only 2 years apart.
I always see Ryan and Sarika hugging each other. They were good friends growing up. Very good friends.
Though Ryan had spent much of his childhood in Jamaica, he immigrated to New York in 2002 and had joined the U.S. Navy.
He was a very attractive guy, and he was in the military.
Ryan is a handsome guy. He's a dark, handsome guy.
After hearing Ryan's stories of his time in America, Sarika was smitten with the idea of living there.
Everybody want a piece of America. What you see on TV and stuff like that, you always want a piece of that.
You fine?
Yes, I'm fine.
Well,
Between Sarika's dreams of a new life and their obvious attraction to each other, Ryan decided to fast-track their relationship.
will you marry me?
Yes, I will.
Really? Really? Whoa, wait up.
I heard that he went down to Jamaica and he married her in less than 2 weeks.
Are you happy?
Yes, I'm very happy. Can you tell?
There had been a ceremony, and it was a little chapel out in the palm trees of Jamaica.
But their whirlwind courtship hit a heartbreaking snag when U.S. officials denied Sarika's request to join Ryan in the U.S.
She went through a hard time with immigration in Jamaica to come here.
Although their separation was bittersweet, the couple made the best of the situation.
Their relationship was long distance, but clearly he loved her and cared for her. That's why he married her. They spoke regularly. When he would go back to Jamaica, he would see her.
In 2008, after 5 long years and hundreds of heartbreaking miles apart, U.S. immigration officials finally granted Sarika a visa.
I felt that she had a genuine love for Ryan and that she couldn't wait to see him.
Ryan seemed overjoyed by the news, but by that time, he was living with a fellow serviceman in St. Mary's, Maryland.
He was still in the military, so he was on deployment to different countries from time to time.
Until better arrangements could be made, Ryan and Sarika decided she should live with Ryan's mother in Brooklyn.
Sarika was living with me in New York while Ryan was in St. Mary's, Maryland.
The best he could do was to go up to New York on weekends and spend time with her.
Once in the States, Sarika made plans to continue her education. Meanwhile, Ryan's career was taking off. He'd recently been promoted to the rank of Petty Officer Second Class. The couple's future had never looked brighter. Until a road trip toward their new beginning took a nightmarish turn, leaving friends and family completely stunned.
I was devastated. It's just unfathomable, to even hear of something like that.
Why would somebody want to kill her? Why?
For detectives on the case, the more pressing question is who? Who would want to murder a woman like Sarika? Given Ryan's initial statement, all they knew for certain is that the couple had been carjacked in New Jersey and forced to drive to this desolate stretch of roadway.
They ended up in this rural area, very sparsely populated, no lights. He essentially just attacked both of them.
A CSI team scours the field, collecting any physical evidence they can find.
They were locating Sarika's purse, her sandals and shoes, scattered in all sorts of locations.
The only thing that appears missing is Ryan's car, a 2007 Honda Accord.
Hey, sir.
Yes, sir.
Can you do an APB for me?
Yes.
07 Honda Accord, 4-door.
After issuing the APB, investigators begin the grim task of examining Sarika's body. Judging from her injuries, it looks like she tried to fight off her assailant until her dying breath.
The condition of Sarika's body was quite tragic. Her nails were chipped, and she had defensive wounds on her hand.
He's going to have some wounds on him.
Scratches, good cuts.
Mm-hmm.
Sarika's body had 58 stab wounds.
Police knew the couple had been violently carjacked, but a more ominous question remained. Just who had targeted them, and why? Nothing could prepare them for the horrific and heart-stopping tale they were about to hear.
I've done 200 or so cases, and I have never seen a case this strange and this weird.
Sarika Holness seemed to have it all. The beautiful Jamaican married her close childhood friend, a handsome naval officer, and moved to the United States to begin their life together.
She came here to live the American dream. Sarika really liked America. She always talked about the opportunities.
Help!
But that dream turned into a nightmare on the night of June 4th, 2009, when Sarika was stabbed to death in a violent carjacking. Her husband, Ryan, managed to survive the attack.
Family was in a lot of pain and just wanted answers and just couldn't understand how such a sweet and innocent person, life was taken so short.
For the last several hours, police have been trying to fill in the blanks of what exactly happened. After securing the scene and examining Sarika's body, they combed the surrounding field for evidence.
There were some personal property, included Sarika's shoes, her purse, which had been partially emptied.
While the evidence suggested the couple had been the victims of a robbery gone awry, the murder weapon was nowhere to be found, and plenty of questions still remained. For starters, why had Sarika's killer lashed out so violently?
Sarika was stabbed multiple times. It was brutal.
Not that Ryan had fared much better himself. Rushed to the hospital for treatment, police had yet to obtain his formal statement.
Mr. Holness had a cracked rib and he had injuries to his face and head.
He was also cut with this very large knife, and it looked like a scene from a butcher shop.
Still, after the deadly injuries Sarika sustained, it seems like a miracle Ryan is even alive.
Ryan was a mess. He was in shock, partly, I guess, because of what had happened. It was a very brutal stab wound.
Once he's treated and released from the hospital, Ryan begins by painfully recounting the events of the past 24 hours.
We were enjoying a nice day out, nice night out.
He said it all began around 9:30 p.m. the night before, when he and Sarika left his mother's apartment in New York, bound for Maryland. 2 hours into the trip, they stopped for gas in Cranberry, New Jersey.
After pumping his gas, he realized that, oh, I have to use the restroom.
Hey, run to the restroom. I'll be back.
Okay, I'll be here.
All right.
Sarika is waiting for him to take care of his business. And that's when things start to go awry.
As he headed back to the car, Ryan saw a look of terror in his wife's eyes. Once in the driver's seat, Ryan realized the source of her fear.
He observed a man in his back seat with a ski mask on and a hoodie with a gun up to Sarika's head.
Don't make a sound. Drive south.
He used some sort of device to change the way his voice sounded.
What he's saying is that it's just a robbery. I'm just going to take your belongings and take your car and leave you stranded.
Don't do anything stupid. Immediately you'll get hurt.
According to Ryan, the gunman continued talking, and what he said gave him even greater cause for alarm.
I was in Iraq. I didn't come back right.
Ryan said that the carjacker was someone who had mental problems. He talked with him during the car ride about the fact that he hated women.
When I came back, my girl left me.
And he said that this man continued his irrational rantings. And Ryan says in his own mind, he knew this was not going to end well.
The conversation continued as Ryan drove south along the eastern seaboard, through Delaware, then into Maryland, before arriving 123 miles later in Crumpton at approximately 1:30 a.m.
He said after driving to this point in Kent County, the person asked him to pull over, and he stopped.
Now, slowly, get out of the car.
Ryan and Sarika exited the vehicle with the carjacker right behind them.
He put the gun down on the car and that he bound Ryan with duct tape.
But as the carjacker restrained him, Sarika suddenly took off running into a nearby field. Ryan claims their attacker quickly caught his wife and threw her to the ground.
Ryan hears Sarika screaming, "He's cutting me. He's stabbing me."
Hearing his wife's screams, Ryan tried to intervene, but with his hands and feet bound with duct tape, there was little he could do. Ryan also tells police the attacker slashed at him with a knife, opening a gash in his arm.
Ryan gets cut deeply, almost down to the bone on his forearm.
Ryan claims that in addition to cutting him, the attacker punched him repeatedly.
The masked gunman punches Ryan in the ribs and all about the face.
One final blow, a kick to the head, turned Ryan's world to black.
Ryan Holness said that he was hit in the head and knocked out for several hours.
Regaining consciousness early that morning, Ryan managed to free himself. He found his wife's lifeless body in a nearby field and staggered to the Rolfs farmhouse for help.
We've had murders. We've had some really terrible things happen, but we've never had something this bloody happen here.
I tried to help. But I was tied down. I couldn't get loose.
Ryan's statement dovetails with the notion that Sarika's death was the result of a violent carjacking. But before police finished their interview, they asked Ryan if he'd be willing to hand over his clothing to be processed for DNA and other physical evidence. He agrees.
He didn't try to hide anything. He tries to cooperate with the police.
Between Sarika's gruesome injuries and Ryan's description of their crazed assailant, police can't help but wonder if the motive for the crime goes beyond a mere carjacking.
It's just like this crazy guy snapped. And when he saw Sarika run away, that was the straw that broke the camel's back.
"I hate women." That's what the masked gunman said. There's the motive as to why it happened.
While police aren't certain what kind of monster they're dealing with, the fact remains that Sarika's killer is still at large. And until he's brought to justice, local residents will be on pins and needles.
I'm scared to death, not knowing what the heck's going on. I was thinking maybe I should keep a couple knives in my bedroom, just in case.
Thankfully, the next day detectives catch their first break. Ryan's vehicle is located 80 miles away in Washington, D.C.
It was like, okay, they found the car. Now they're going to find some kind of evidence that, who did it.
Investigators seem optimistic as they race to D.C. But when they arrive, any hopes of finding the killer are quickly dashed.
The Honda Accord was found on A Street in D.C. near a bus station.
Whoever drove the car over there was able to make a pretty quick and convenient getaway from there, hopped on a bus and was gone.
Detectives scour the area in hopes of tracking down some surveillance footage of the bus stop, but their search comes up empty. It appears their only suspect has vanished without a trace. And as police continue hunting for Sarika's killer, the story would only grow more mysterious. In fact, police were about to uncover a dirty little secret about Sarika and Ryan, a secret so explosive it might have cost Sarika her life.
Yeah.
26-year-old Jamaican-born Sarika Holness moved to the U.S. to be with her loving husband Ryan and live the American dream.
She was very happy. They were looking for a better life and a future together.
But on June 5th, 2009, their 6-year marriage came to a bizarre and gruesome ending.
Don't make a sound. Drive south.
Her dream had now turned into like a Freddy Krueger nightmare.
According to Ryan, a carjacker attacked the couple, beating him unconscious, then stabbing Sarika to death. 24 hours into the investigation, detectives catch a break. Ryan's stolen vehicle has been located 80 miles away in Washington, D.C.
The car was located in a part of D.C. that was near the bus station. They canvassed the area. They tried to get the videos to try to figure out what happened.
But their search comes up empty. Investigators then hand the vehicle over to their CSI team.
They go over the car with a fine-tooth comb. All those things are collected, tagged, and bagged to connect the dots to the perpetrator.
While detectives wait for the lab results, they reach out to the gas station in New Jersey where the carjacking allegedly took place.
Can you run it from last night, late?
Pouring through the footage, they are able to identify Ryan's car.
Right there. That's the car.
We could see that the car pulled up, but we couldn't see anything else to determine what happened. The surveillance was inconclusive.
For detectives, it's a dead end.
Are there any more cameras that show the pumps or any more angles that shows the pumps a little bit better?
No, these are the only ones covering the pumps.
With their investigation at an impasse, police decide to retrace their steps. They start by re-examining the killer's alleged motive.
If it's a robbery, money, cash, jewelry, those are the things you're going to take.
But an inventory of personal items recovered at the crime scene suggests nothing appears missing.
Mrs. Holness's wallet was there, still zippered up. Inside there was money, her credit card, her cell phone was there.
And the couple's most valuable material possession, Ryan's car, had been abandoned at a bus station.
Why would a carjacker take a car to a bus station? He has the keys, he has the car.
Unable to answer that question, detectives begin to ponder a new and more chilling theory. Perhaps this wasn't a robbery after all, but rather a crime meant to look like one. Could Sarika have been the real target all along? That might explain why Ryan was left alive.
I couldn't imagine anybody hurting Sarika in any form.
It was a mystery. Why would anyone want to kill Susie?
While her family seems at a loss for a motive, they do reveal one startling secret about Ryan and Sarika's relationship. A secret that leaves detectives speechless.
Ryan and Sarika are second cousins.
She married him without the family approval. And once they found out, it just totally tore the family apart.
I didn't know what was going on between them. I saw them as kids hugging each other knowing they were cousins.
But as much as their family disapproved of their holy matrimony, one thing soon becomes very clear to police. This marriage wasn't motivated purely by love.
It was a marriage of convenience. It was just to get married so that she could get her papers.
She married him for her to have a better life in the United States.
A fact Sarika didn't exactly flaunt, especially to U.S. immigration officials.
She's very secretive. She didn't want anybody to know that.
But it wasn't just Sarika who kept the true nature of her relationship with Ryan a secret. Ryan also kept the truth of the marriage under wraps from his numerous girlfriends.
We learned that Ryan had multiple girlfriends in Maryland, girlfriends in New York.
For detectives, any one of Ryan's girlfriends could be a potential suspect.
It could have been a woman. Mr. Holness was portrayed as somewhat of a womanizer. We know we all do crazy things for love and romance.
As investigators dig deeper into the case, they will unearth a trove of sordid secrets, including the shocking revelation that the twisted depths of this relationship run much deeper than anyone could ever imagine. Detectives in Maryland are more puzzled than ever by the stabbing death of 26-year-old Sarika Holness. Based on information provided by her husband Ryan,
Drive south.
police initially believed Sarika had died during a botched carjacking. But within hours of discovering Sarika's body, the investigation shifts gears. Detectives have just learned strange new details about Ryan and Sarika's marriage.
They were from the same family tree. It was cousins.
It was a marriage of convenience. It was his cousin. He just wanted to help her to come to the U.S.
Investigators have also discovered that Sarika wasn't the only woman in Ryan's life.
We know he had other girlfriends, and it seems a bit strange to have so many different girlfriends.
In light of the startling turn of events, police decide to bring Ryan in for another round of questioning.
So, Ron, tell me about Sarika, about your relationship with her.
Ryan admits their relationship is a little unorthodox, but he claims they both benefited from the arrangement.
It was just perhaps a different kind of a marriage and relationship than we might expect in the traditional sense of the word.
But what about the other women? According to Ryan, they were no secret to Sarika.
So she knew about your other women?
Of course. She knew about all of them.
It was an open relationship, and he felt comfortable in that kind of relationship. He believed that she was the kind of person that was accepting of that same relationship.
Still, police are curious if Sarika truly embraced the idea of an open marriage. But according to Ryan, he wasn't the only one in the relationship with a lover on the side.
She lived for a few years in Jamaica, even after they were married. And she had some kind of a male friend.
Police contact Sarika's family to corroborate Ryan's story. Sarika's family confirms she indeed had a boyfriend in Jamaica named Junior Powell.
Even though she was married to Ryan, Sarika was Junior's girl.
According to her family, Junior helped fill a gap in Sarika's life after she and Ryan married, but were forced to live in separate countries until immigration officials gave Sarika clearance to immigrate to the U.S. Sarika's family tells detectives that while Junior was head over heels for Sarika, he wasn't exactly thrilled with her marriage to Ryan.
I talked to him about that. It's not something that he was happy with.
Could her marriage to Ryan have finally pushed Junior to the brink? That theory seemed possible until police contact authorities in Jamaica. Turns out, Junior was in the Caribbean at the time of the murder. But if detectives can eliminate Sarika's lover as a suspect, then who committed this vicious crime? A search of Ryan's phone records reveals one possible clue.
Police were able to intercept text messages that he was getting from a woman the night of the murder.
The number is registered to a woman in Virginia Beach by the name of Deidre Williams. When police question Deidre, she admits that she and Ryan have been dating for the past 8 months.
Did you text Ryan the night that Sarika got murdered?
Yeah, we texted a few times when he was leaving from New York.
But detectives are shocked when Deidre reveals the nature of their conversation.
Ryan text message to say that he's going to initiate a divorce from Sarika.
Her testimony was inconsistent with Ryan's story.
A review of the actual text messages shows that Deidre is telling the truth. Why did Ryan lie to police when they asked if he was happy with his marriage to Sarika? Detectives begin questioning Ryan's account of the attack.
Ryan Holness says he woke up after being knocked out and went straight to the home of a resident that was nearby.
Looking to verify his story, police call a canine unit to the scene.
Canine sniffed some of Ryan's clothing and he tracked exactly where Ryan went.
Locking onto a scent, the dogs don't lead handlers directly to the farmhouse where Ryan called 911.
Reckon he's picking up something we didn't see?
I don't know.
Rather, they take police in the opposite direction, to 2 locations Ryan never mentioned, a mobile home and a bridge over a nearby river.
Did he mention anything about going anywhere else?
Not to my knowledge, he didn't.
I don't think he did.
Mr. Holness' scent was traced down to a river that he said he never went to. That can't happen, or the hound wouldn't have followed it.
I guess we'll have to ask Ron some more questions.
3:30 in the morning, there was a knock on her front door and a knock on her rear door. No one answered the door, and there was duct tape found in her yard. This is the time when Mr. Ryan Holness should have been unconscious. There was a lot of unanswered questions, which now makes them think there's more to the story that's being told.
But police could never imagine just how twisted this sordid story was about to get, or the unspeakable evil that had forever severed 2 lives. The investigation into Sarika Holness's murder is getting more bizarre by the hour. Sarika was stabbed to death on a deserted road near the farming community of Crumpton, Maryland. But the investigation has revealed that Sarika and her husband Ryan were both having affairs and that they were cousins.
You just can't make this up.
Don't make a sound.
Initially, police believed Sarika had died during a botched carjacking. But 24 hours into the case, the evidence is starting to point detectives in a new direction.
Ryan's story and the evidence, they're not matching up.
In fact, a canine search of the crime scene has placed Ryan at a bridge and then a mobile home shortly after the murder.
All this happened and he was supposed to be unconscious. It's not connecting.
And with the murder weapon nowhere to be found, detectives wonder if Ryan's trip to the bridge had a nefarious motive.
This is close to a river where you can discard the knife.
With circumstantial evidence mounting, police execute a search warrant of the townhouse in Maryland Ryan still shared with a friend.
Ryan was using his roommate's computer. So we talked with the roommate and we actually got the computer.
Found anything?
Yes, actually, I have.
As a cybercrime unit examines the computer, they notice Ryan filed a fraudulent transaction.
He was masquerading in the name of Sarika Holness online. And he got a $500,000 life insurance policy. It would double to $1 million depending on how the death happened. And he put himself as the beneficiary of this life insurance policy.
That's a motive.
But a forensic analysis of the computer's hard drive also reveals something else.
Looks like he's been searching a lot of metro bus stations in D.C.
Ryan Holness had actually Googled the location that this car ended up being. And he Googled this several weeks before.
Good work. Appreciate it. Save that for us.
For detectives, this evidence suggests one thing and one thing only.
Premeditation. Someone's had a plan and they were putting all the pieces in place before they initiated.
But investigators have a problem. Ryan couldn't have pulled this off by himself.
We know he had an accomplice, taking the car away to Washington, D.C.
Even without a positive ID on this alleged mystery accomplice, police decide to push forward with charges.
All right, stand up. For what? You're under arrest. For what? For murder. I didn't do anything.
The news leaves more than a few people stunned.
Man, this is stupid.
To tell you the truth, my action was that he was innocent. I would have bet my life that he was innocent.
I believe in Ryan's innocence because I know he didn't do it. Ryan is not the type of person.
On March 14, 2011, Ryan Holness is led into a Baltimore courtroom to stand trial for the death of his wife, Sarika.
What I was concerned about was the family members and making sure that justice was done for them.
Prosecutors opened by laying out the government's case, contending that on the night of June 4, 2009, Ryan Holness drove Sarika to a field in Crumpton, Maryland, where he stabbed her 58 times. After the murder, Ryan scattered his and Sarika's belongings and then inflicted a knife wound to create the illusion of a violent carjacking. While Ryan's mystery accomplice drove his car to D.C., Ryan disposed of the murder weapon.
We believe very strongly that Ryan Holness went to the bridge and threw that knife in the river.
According to prosecutors, Ryan then went to the mobile home. But when nobody answered, he headed to the Rolfe residence where they called 911.
It sounds strange. It sounds unbelievable. But this is how he killed his wife.
Prosecutors explained to jurors the motive behind this unthinkable crime. Sarika was worth more to Ryan dead than alive.
It really just boiled down to greed. It was greed to get the $1 million in insurance money.
After laying out the motive, prosecutors hammer away at the discrepancy between Ryan's version of events and the evidence revealed during the subsequent canine search.
The canine dog followed Ryan Holness's scent to the bridge. It was very clear that his story was just not adding up.
Ryan's attorneys agree that their client's story isn't entirely consistent, but they assert it has nothing to do with dishonesty or murder.
If I'd been carjacked, I'm stabbed, and I'm knocked unconscious, I'd have been very confused on the exact sequence of events and where I'd actually traveled.
The defense claims that's why Ryan never told police about his trip to the bridge or to the mobile home. On the heels of a violent attack that left him dazed and confused, Ryan simply forgot. But as prosecutors point out, if Ryan had truly survived such a brutal assault, medical records would support that claim.
Ryan Holness said that he was knocked out for several hours. Well, the doctor said there was no physical evidence that he sustained any injury to be knocked out for that amount of time.
Prosecutors then lay out the laundry list of evidence they believe confirms Ryan had been plotting to murder Sarika. His affairs, the damning phone and computer records, and the $1 million insurance policy Ryan took out on Sarika's life. But Ryan's defense team counters that their client's actions weren't that unusual in light of other policies Ryan and Sarika had recently obtained.
She was on other policies of Ryan's as well that even predated this insurance policy.
The defense's argument makes sense, but they have a much harder time refuting the forensic evidence recovered from both Sarika's body and Ryan's clothing.
She had chipped fingernails and chipped toenail polish, and they found some of those chip particles on Ryan's clothing.
The evidence suggests a struggle took place between Ryan and Sarika around the time of her death. It seems like a crushing blow to Ryan's defense, but his attorneys quickly turned the tables.
There was blood inside the vehicle, which did not match Ryan's blood, nor did it match Sarika's blood.
The defense argues this is proof that Ryan has been telling the truth all along, that they were the victims of a violent carjacking, and that Sarika's killer is still at large.
We provided every reasonable explanation to that jury that he was an innocent person and that the real killer was still out there.
But prosecutors still have one more witness to call, and what he was about to say would not only rock the courtroom, but could very well make or break the case. Charged with the death of his wife and second cousin, Sarika, the trial of 30-year-old Ryan Holness is rapidly drawing to a close. Ryan's attorneys have argued a DNA sample recovered inside the Holness' vehicle is proof that an unidentified carjacker murdered Sarika. But prosecutors argue otherwise and call a surprise witness to the stand: Ryan's cellmate in the Kent County Jail, Stephen McGrath.
His cellmate was able to get information from Ryan Holness that was supportive of the investigation.
According to McGrath, Ryan asked for his help drafting a letter in the voice of the carjacker, a letter designed as a ruse to divert suspicion away from himself.
He was writing it to the Washington Post. Dear Washington Post, I am the real killer. I killed Sarika Holness. He wanted to give the confession letter to his cellmate, who was getting out of jail soon. And his cellmate was supposed to rewrite the confession letter, and then they were going to send the confession letter to the Washington Post.
McGrath testifies that Ryan needed his help to ensure the letter could never be traced directly back to him. But instead of sending the letter to the newspaper, McGrath turned it over to the police. The details were telling.
The information that was in the letter could only have been provided by the perpetrator.
A copy of the letter is shown to jurors, and its authenticity verified.
They brought in a handwriting expert, and it was confirmed that it was Ryan Holness' handwriting.
With the confession letter in mind, the jury breaks for deliberation. Sarika's family anxiously awaits their decision.
I say to myself, Ryan, if you are the one who really killed Susie, whatever you get, deserve it.
On March 28, 2011, the jury returns with a verdict: guilty.
We're all broken. Sometimes I think of it as if I'm watching a soap opera or a movie. That's how I look at it. I don't think it's for real.
But Sarika's family is relieved.
They had been living with this nightmare for months and months. So to have the jury come back and determine that he's guilty on all counts was important to them.
2 months later, the judge issues Ryan's punishment: life in prison. The sentence was the final chapter in this tragic love story tainted by scandal and greed. Sarika was so enchanted with the idea of being married and living a better life in America that she couldn't see the evil lurking in the heart of the man who promised to make those dreams come true.
He's a killer. I mean, he's just a killer. He devised an elaborate scheme to kill his wife to obtain $1 million in insurance money. And what would motivate someone to do that is just beyond me.
The Architects of Deception, a novelization of shadow lives and stolen identities. Prologue, The Mask. The mirror does not lie, but the man staring into it does. In the soft glow of a California morning, 1979, the man who called himself Dr. Gerald Barnes adjusted his stethoscope. It was a prop, though a functional one. To the world, it was a symbol of healing, of authority, of a life dedicated to the preservation of pulse and breath. To Gerald Barnbaum, it was the final piece of a costume he had been perfecting since he left Chicago in a cloud of disgrace. He liked the weight of the lab coat. It had a specific stiffness, a clinical white that suggested purity. He practiced his doctor smile in the glass worm, reassuring, just the right amount of paternal concern. He wasn't just a pharmacist with a revoked license anymore. He was an actor who had found the role of a lifetime, and the stage was the Pacific Southwest Medical Group. 400 miles away, the real Dr. Gerald Barnes was waking up in Stockton, unaware that his name, his hard-earned credentials, and his very soul had been harvested by a ghost. Chapter 1, The Assistant's Shadow. Rick D'Alessandro liked his boss. That was the problem. In the busy hallways of the Orange County Clinic, Dr. Barnes was a breath of fresh air. He was a likable little guy. As Rick would often describe him, quick with a joke, easy to talk to, and possessed of a charismatic energy that made patients feel better before he even examined them. "Morning, Rick," Barnes said, breezing past the reception desk with a stack of charts. "Beautiful day to save some lives, isn't it?" Rick smiled, checking the clipboard. "We've got a full house, Doc, 25 scheduled, and the walk-ins are already lining up." "The more the merrier," Barnes replied, his eyes twinkling behind scholarly spectacles. Rick watched him go, a small frown creeping onto his face. There was something about the way Barnes handled the more complex cases, a certain hesitation, a reliance on routine prescriptions. But in a high-volume clinic, efficiency was king. Barnes was efficient. He was the director. He was the man with the answers. or so everyone thought. Chapter 2, The December Chill. December 26, 1979. The holiday spirit was a fading echo, replaced by the gray reality of a winter morning. John Mackenzie walked into the clinic, and even from across the room, Rick could see the man was vibrating with exhaustion. At 29, Mackenzie should have been in the prime of his life, but he looked like a candle guttering in the wind. His skin was sallow, his eyes sunken, and his gait was unsteady. "I don't feel right, Rick," Mackenzie whispered, his voice dry as parchment. "Thirsty, so thirsty, and dizzy. It's like the floor won't stay still." Rick ushered him into exam room 3. "The doctor will see you in a moment, John. Hang in there." When Barnes entered the room, he didn't see a man on the brink of a diabetic coma. He saw a script to be followed. He listened to the complaints: excessive urination, dry mouth, the loss of equilibrium, inner ear disturbance. Barnes pronounced with the practiced ease of a veteran clinician: "A touch of vertigo. Happens after the holiday stress. Diet, the usual." He scribbled on a pad: "An anti-vertigo drug. Something to stop the spinning." "But the thirst, Doc?" Mackenzie asked, clutching a paper cup of water like it was a holy relic. "Your body is reacting to the imbalance," Barnes said, patting him on the shoulder. "Take the pills. We'll run some blood work just to be safe, but you'll be fine by New Year's." Barnes sent him home. He didn't check for the sweet scent of ketones on the man's breath. He didn't notice the classic signs of a body eating itself. He had 39 other patients to see. He had a role to play. And John Mackenzie was just a bit player in the grand drama of Gerald Barnbaum's ego. Chapter 3, 1200. The lab results came back the next day. Dr. Barnes was off, enjoying the perks of his stolen prestige. Rick D'Alessandro was the one who opened the folder. He expected the usual slightly elevated cholesterol, maybe a minor infection. Instead, he saw a number that made his heart stop. Glucose, 1,200 milligrams DL. Normal was 80 to 100. 1,200 was a death sentence. It was a level so high the blood was practically syrup. "Oh, God," Rick whispered. He didn't wait for a supervisor. He didn't wait for Barnes. He grabbed the phone and dialed Mackenzie's number. Ring, ring, ring. No answer. He called the emergency contact Tan ex-wife. She hadn't seen him. He called the other numbers on the chart. Silence. A cold dread settled in Rick's stomach. He looked at the chart again. Barnes had prescribed an anti-vertigo medication. He had sent a man an active, acute diabetic crisis home with a pill for dizziness. "I need the police," Rick told the dispatcher, his voice trembling. "Garden Grove PD. We have a patient. I think he's in danger." Chapter 4, The Kitchen Floor. The officers broke the door in. The apartment was quiet, the air heavy with the stillness of a life interrupted. They found John Mackenzie in the kitchen. He was lying on the floor, his body cold, his eyes staring at a ceiling he couldn't see. In his hand, clutched tightly like a failed talisman, was the prescription Dr. Barnes had given him, the anti-vertigo drug. The 29-year-old had collapsed into a coma and died alone, his body starving for insulin while he followed the expert advice of a man who didn't know the difference between a balance disorder and a metabolic catastrophe. When Rick heard the news, the grief was quickly overtaken by a burning, incandescent rage. A doctor might make a mistake, but this felt like a void where knowledge should have been. Rick sat in the quiet of the empty clinic that evening. He looked at the framed diploma on Barnes's wall. He looked at the medical board registration. Something felt hollow. Something felt wrong. He picked up the phone and called the medical board in Sacramento. I need to verify the identity of a Dr. Gerald Barnes, Rick said. Could you fax over his identification photo and file? The fax machine hummed to life. The paper slid out, inch by agonizing inch. Rick watched as the image formed. The man in the photo was older, different features, a different bone structure. The address listed was in Stockton, 400 miles away. Rick looked at the photo, then at the empty chair in the director's office. "You're not him," Rick whispered to the shadows. "Who the hell are you?" Chapter 5. The Pharmacist of Chicago. The investigation into the man who would be king of the clinic revealed a history built on layers of deception. Before he was Dr. Barnes, he was Gerald Barnbaum. In Chicago, he had been a pharmacist, a man who understood the chemistry of medicine but lacked the ethics of it. He had been caught in a Medicaid scam, a greedy little grift that cost him his license. But Barnbaum was a performer. He had been a theater student in college. He knew how to project a character. If he couldn't be a pharmacist, he would be something better, something more powerful. He had called the medical board, posing as the real Dr. Barnes. He told them he had lost his duplicate license and was opening a clinic in Los Angeles. They, trusting the name and the professional tone, mailed him the credentials without a second thought. It was that easy. A phone call, a lie, and a white coat. On August 8, 1980, the curtain finally fell. The police arrived not to discuss a patient, but to escort the leading man to a cell. The charge, practicing medicine without a license, and, more importantly, manslaughter. But as Gerald Barnbaum sat in the back of the cruiser, he wasn't crying. He was already thinking about his next role. Chapter 6. The Second Act. Prison was supposed to be the end of the story. For the family of John Mackenzie, 3 years felt like a slap in the face. For the real Dr. Barnes, the damage to his name was a wound that wouldn't heal. But Gerald Barnbaum was a man of habit. 18 months later, he was out on good behavior. He walked out of the prison gates, looked at the California sun, and realized he didn't know how to be anyone else. He didn't go back to Chicago. He didn't find a trade. He went to a different city, found a different clinic, and put on a different white coat. He became Dr. Gerald Barnes again. He even got married. Lisa Roberts thought she had found the perfect husband. He was a doctor, a provider, a romantic who showered her with flowers and took her to concerts. He earned a six-figure salary. He was the medical director of a Los Angeles facility. I'm so proud of you. Gerald, she would say as she kissed him goodbye in the morning. It's all for you, darling, he would reply. He lived this life for years. He saw patients. He ordered tests. He performed physicals for FBI agents. He was so good at the role that even the government's premier law enforcement agency didn't check the credentials of the man sticking a tongue depressor into their throats. Until a Christmas party in 1996. Rick D'Alessandro was there. He had moved on with his life, but he never forgot the face of the man who killed John McKenzie. He was standing near the punch bowl when he saw a familiar, likable little guy wearing a name tag. Hi, I'm Dr. Barnes. The world stopped. Rick felt the blood rush to his ears. It had been 16 years, but the mask was identical. Hi, Rick, the man said, his voice as smooth as silk. How are you doing? Rick stared at him, his fists clenching. Well, Gerald, I'm not doing too well, because you're doing the same thing you did back in the 70s. The doctor didn't flinch. He gave a small, sad smile. Well, you know, Rick, this is all just a big mistake. He walked away, disappeared into the crowd, and then disappeared from the city. But the FBI was now on the trail. Chapter 7, The Highway Ghost. While Barnbaum was a predator of the clinic, a different kind of architect was emerging in the heart of the Midwest. David Brankel didn't wear a white coat. He wore expensive suits. He drove a black BMW. He was a businessman, a developer, a man with a vision. In Bloomington, Indiana, Brankel was the man to know. He rented an office from Phil and Bonnie Sperry, claiming to run an architectural and construction firm called ACR. Architecture, construction. And what's there for, David? Phil Sperry asked one afternoon over coffee. Brankel smiled, a smooth, practiced expression that reached his eyes but didn't warm them. Results, Phil, always results. But the R stood for robbery. Brankel was a man of dualities. Sunday through Wednesday, he was a family man in Vincennes, living in a rented house with a wife and a young son. Thursday through Saturday, he was a ghost on the interstate. He would drive his black BMW, a car he couldn't afford, to grocery store banks, tucked inside Winn-Dixies and Meejers. He used a simple disguise, a fishing hat, a mustache, a pair of tan coveralls. He would walk up to the teller and hand over a note. I have a gun. Be quiet. Go home alive. He was efficient. He was calm. He was the interstate bank mart bandit IBM. and he was driving a path of financial destruction across 6 states. He had an accomplice, a woman named Donna Hewins. She was the Bonnie to his Clyde, a waitress he met at a club who fell for the thrill and the dapper suits. She sat in the idling BMW while David walked into the stores, a scanner in his hand, listening to the police frequencies. He was playing a game with the world. He was the successful entrepreneur by day and the most prolific bank robber in the region by night. He believed he was smarter than the detectives, smarter than the FBI, and certainly smarter than the people he scammed. Chapter 8, Operation Intercept. Detective Larry Duncan of the Louisville Metro Police was a man of maps. He sat in his office, staring at a cluster of pins that traced the path of the IBM bandit. Indianapolis, Louisville, Cincinnati. The pins followed the interstates like a trail of breadcrumbs. He's using the highways as his veins, Duncan muttered to his colleagues, Joe Schley and Agent Freihofer. He jumps on the I-65 or the I-71, and he's gone before the first cruiser arrives. Duncan had a theory. The bandit wasn't just a criminal, he was a commuter. He was likely based in Indiana, traveling out to hit targets and returning to his safe zone. In 2003, Duncan launched Operation Intercept. He placed undercover officers inside 5 target banks. He coordinated with 1,200 officers across the city. The trap was set. On September 6th, the IBM bandit struck hit number 35. The radio crackled. Operation Intercept. Operation Intercept. The call was too loud, too frantic. David Brankel, sitting in his BMW with the scanner hissing in his ear, heard the panic in the officer's voice. He didn't head for the interstate. He took the back roads. He slipped through the residential streets, weaving like a snake through the tall grass of the suburbs. Duncan watched the black sedan vanish on the horizon of his map. He's gone, Duncan said, leaning back in his chair. He's listening. He's always listening. Chapter 9, The Final Curb. Luck is a finite resource. For David Brankel, it ran out on a stretch of Highway 45 in December 2003. He was driving too fast. He was always driving too fast. He cut off a vehicle, nearly sending it into oncoming traffic. Unfortunately for Brankel, the man behind the wheel was Bloomington Detective Kevin Hill. The chase that followed was a symphony of screaming tires and 100-mile-per-hour desperation. Brankel disregarded stop signs. He ran people off the road. He was a man who had built a life on the belief that he could never be caught, and now the reality was catching up in his rearview mirror. He escaped the immediate pursuit, but he left behind a clue. He had dropped his license. Days later, in Vincennes, the Indiana State Police surrounded a house at 1919 Hickory. Brankel tried to run one last time. He abandoned his young son in the car final, chilling testament to his narcissism, and fled on foot through an apartment complex. He tripped on a curb. The interstate bank mart bandit, the man who had hit 43 banks and stolen $136,000, fell face first into the dirt. As Sergeant Greg Winkler clicked the handcuffs into place, a small knife fell out of Brankel's pocket. It just fell out. Brankel stammered, the smooth businessman gone, replaced by a shivering, pathetic figure. I wasn't going to hurt you. Chapter 10, The Interrogation Room. The two worlds of deception met in the cold fluorescent light of an interrogation room. In one city, Gerald Barnbaum was being sentenced to 12.5 years, weeping about his prostate cancer and his grandchildren, even as the judge warned that he would do it all again if given a chance. In Vincennes, David Brankel sat across from Larry Duncan. "I'm the guy you're looking for," Brankel said, leaning forward as if he were about to offer a business deal. "I'm the IBM bandit. Call Louisville. Call Cincinnati. They'll want to talk to me." For 6 hours, Brankel talked. He told them about the first robbery. He told them about Donna. He told them about his mother, who told him he couldn't even mow the lawn right. He was a man who wanted to be the most successful bank robber of all time because he couldn't be anything else. He showed no remorse for the people he had cheated, the Sperrys, the Logans. He claimed he did legitimate work for them. He was a sociopath who had absolute no conscience. Chapter 11, The FBI's Doctor. Marie Konjovsky, an FBI agent, stared at the file on her desk in disbelief. The irony was a bitter pill to swallow. The Bureau had a contract with a clinic in Los Angeles to perform employment physicals. For years, the man sitting in that office, the one who had checked the heartbeats and reflexes of over 100 FBI agents, was a man the government had already put behind bars. Gerald Barnbaum hadn't just fooled a clinic. He had fooled the premier investigative agency in the world. While the Bureau scrambled to assess the damage, Lisa Roberts sat in her living room, the space that used to be filled with the warmth of a loving husband. She now referred to him as the Never Was. "I didn't know his real name," she whispered to the investigators. "I didn't know his real age. Every night I shared a bed with a ghost. I trusted him with my life, my family, my future." Lisa realized that Barnbaum hadn't just stolen a name from a doctor in Stockton. He had stolen the years she could never get back. He had been a master of the mundane, playing the role of the devoted husband so convincingly that she never questioned why he never talked about his childhood or why he was so vague about his medical school days. Chapter 12, The Bus Ticket Blunder. In the world of bureaucracy, sometimes the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. After his 1996 conviction, Barnbaum was serving his time in a federal facility. In 2000, he was scheduled for a transfer because he had been categorized as a low-security inmate decision that baffled Agent Konjovsky. The Bureau of Prisons didn't use a secure transport. They gave Gerald Barnbaum a bus ticket. They told him to report to a facility in Illinois. Barnbaum took the ticket, walked out of the prison gates, and immediately vanished. He didn't go to Illinois. He went back to the only life he knew how to live. A month later, U.S. Marshal Joseph Exner walked into a North Hollywood clinic. He had a hunch. He didn't look for a man in a jumpsuit. He looked for a man in a lab coat. Gerald Barnbaum. Exner called out. A man stepped out of an exam room. He was wearing a crisp white coat, the stethoscope draped around his neck. He looked at the marshals and smiled that practiced. Clinical smile. "You guys are good," Barnbaum said, turning around to be handcuffed. He had been back on the job for weeks, seeing patients, prescribing controlled substances, and collecting a paycheck as Dr. Gerald Barnes. He was 63 years old, and he was already planning his next comeback. Chapter 13, The $9 Million Lesson. The fallout from Barnbaum's final act at Executive Health Group was catastrophic. Carl Jansen, an executive at Atlantic Richfield, had been one of Dr. Barnes's patients. He had undergone a full physical, including a prostate exam performed by a man with no medical training. I saw him on the evening news the next day. Jansen recalled, the disgust still evident in his voice. Handcuffs. The evening news. I had trusted this man with my health, my privacy. Jansen wasn't alone. Nearly 500 former patients joined a civil lawsuit. The evidence revealed a shocking lack of diligence. Executive Health Group hadn't performed even a basic background check. If they had, they would have seen the multiple felony convictions and the trail of dead and duped patients. The company was forced to settle for over $9 million. It was a price paid for greed and negligence, and it put the firm out of business. But for the victims, the money didn't erase the feeling of being violated by an imposter. Chapter 14, The Pet Store Dream. While Barnbaum was a ghost in the clinic, David Brankel was a predator in the pet store. In Vincennes, Alan and Becky Logan were the embodiment of the American dream. They ran Logan's Wet Pets and More, a beloved local institution. They wanted to expand to build a family entertainment complex called Logan's Great Escape. When they met David Brankel, they thought their prayers had been answered. He looked like a gift from God, Becky remembered. He had the suits, the Vanguard Capital marketing materials, the timetables. He looked legit. Brankel charged them a $3,500 retainer and $500 a month. But his most chilling tactic involved his young son, Michael. On the first of every month, Brankel would walk into the pet store holding Michael's hand. He would have the boy hand the bill to Alan Logan. It was a prop, just like Barnbaum's stethoscope. The presence of the child created an atmosphere of trust, a sense that Brankel was a family man just like them. It's sad, Alan said years later, He used that boy to rob us. He had no conscience. Brankel was living a triple life. The devoted father in Vincennes, the entrepreneur in Bloomington, and the serial bank robber on the interstate. He was a sociopath who viewed people as meal tickets, and he didn't care who he stepped on to fund his dapper lifestyle. Chapter 15, The Last Act. In 2004, the curtain finally closed, at least for a while. David Brankel received 21 years in federal prison for 43 counts of bank robbery. Donna Hewins, the waitress who became his getaway driver, received house arrest and probation. Brankel owed $175,000 in restitution, but for the Logans and the Sperrys, not a dime would ever return. Brankel maintained to the end that his work for them was legitimate. In Minnesota, at Vasica Federal Prison, Gerald Barnbaum, now in his 70s, sat in his cell. His projected release was 2018. Investigators who had tracked him for decades were not under any illusions. His age won't make a difference, one detective noted. He's a very dangerous human being. When he walks through those doors, he will be a physician again. He doesn't know how to be anyone else. The architects of deception had been dismantled, but their legacy remained in the lives they shattered and the trust they broke. They were men who proved that in a world of credentials and suits, a mask can be more powerful than the truth. As long as there is greed, and as long as there is a desire to believe in the perfect professional, there will be men like Barnbaum and Brankel waiting in the shadows, ready to put on the coat and start the show all over again. To be continued. Red Bones. Book 1 of the Shetland Mysteries. Prologue, The Wind and the Wire. The wind across the Shetland Islands did not blow. It howled. It was a living, breathing entity that tore off the North Sea, tasting of salt, ancient ice, and bitter secrets. It scoured the treeless hills of Bresse, rattling the corrugated iron roofs of the old crofts and bending the heather until it snapped. In the deep, suffocating darkness of a Tuesday night, Mima Wilson sat in her armchair, listening to it. The fire in the hearth had burned down to glowing peat embers, casting long, wavering shadows across the faded floral wallpaper. Mima was a woman carved from the landscape itself, weathered, unyielding, holding onto the land of her ancestors with a grip that neither time nor the desperate pleas of her own son could loosen. She pulled her thick whereupon shawl tighter around her frail shoulders. The clock on the mantelpiece ticked, a slow, methodical heartbeat in the silent room. Her gaze drifted to the window. Beyond the glass, the darkness was absolute, save for the faint, rhythmic sweep of the Bresse lighthouse cutting through the sea fret. Then another sound, a crunch of boots on the gravel outside. Mima froze. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't the feral cats that sometimes sought shelter under the eaves. It was a heavy, deliberate step. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice raspy but firm. She wasn't a woman given to easy fright. She had lived through the war, through the treacherous nights of the Shetland bus, through the loss of her husband. Silence answered her. She slowly pushed herself up from the chair, her joints protesting. She moved toward the narrow hallway, her eyes darting to the old wooden cupboard where she kept the shotgun. It hadn't been fired in years, but the cold, heavy steel of it was a comfort she suddenly craved. "Is that you?" she called again, a sliver of uncertainty finally piercing her bravado. "Joseph?" The front door rattled. A shadow blocked the sliver of moonlight bleeding through the frosted glass. Mima's hand reached for the doorknob, hesitation warring with defiance. Then came the deafening roar. The glass shattered inward, a storm of jagged diamonds. The sheer force of the blast threw Mima backward, the world erupting into blinding white light and the sharp, metallic stench of cordite. She hit the floor, the sound of the wind rushing in through the broken door, mingling with the final, fading beat of her own heart. And then there was only the wind. Chapter 1: The Remains of the Morning. Detective Inspector Jimmy Perez woke to the sound of chaos. "Dad! Dad! Dad!" The voice belonged to his stepdaughter, Cassie, and it carried the distinct, frantic pitch of a teenager who was about to miss the morning ferry. Jimmy groaned, burying his face in the pillow for a fleeting second before the reality of single parenthood dragged him upward. The air in the house was freezing. The ancient boiler had given up sometime in the night again. He stumbled out of bed, running a hand through his dark, unruly hair. "I'm up, Cass! I'm up!" He found her in the hallway, a whirlwind of school bags, half-eaten toast, and exasperation. She looked so much like her mother that sometimes it caught Jimmy off guard, a sharp pain beneath his ribs that he had learned to live with. "Have you got everything?" Jimmy asked, trying to inject some authority into his sleep-graveled voice. He picked up a stray mitten from the floor. "You got your gloves? Your homework?" Cassie spun around, her school tie hanging loose, glaring at the mitten as if it had personally offended her. "What do you think this is, Dad?" A fashion choice. It was Norse mythology this week. We had to build a longboat out of lolly sticks, and it's crumbling. "Right, don't be cheeky," Jimmy muttered, helping her balance the fragile, glue-smeared wooden structure on top of her textbooks. "Just get your coat on." "Well, don't pretend like you're organized," she shot back, though there was a fond smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "We're 15 minutes late already. The ferry won't wait, and if I'm late for Mr. Henderson's class again, he's going to make me recite the entire lineage of Odin." "We'll make it," Jimmy promised, grabbing his own coat. The heavy, dark wool felt like armor. The drive to the Lerwick ferry terminal was a blur of gray skies and biting rain. After dropping Cassie off with a quick kiss to her forehead and a stern warning to keep her mobile phone turned on, Jimmy headed toward the police station. Lerwick was waking up. The stone buildings huddled together against the cold, while the harbor bobbed with fishing trawlers and oil industry vessels. The air smelled of diesel, salt, and the faint, sweet scent of brewing coffee from the cafes on Commercial Street. The station was already buzzing when Jimmy walked in. He shed his wet coat, hanging it on the rack by the door. "Morning, Billy," Jimmy called out to the desk sergeant, who was busy trying to unjam the ancient photocopier. "Morning, Inspector," Billy replied, giving the machine a sharp smack. Jimmy walked into the main bullpen, rubbing his hands together to get the circulation going. "Morning, Craig. Anything exciting happen while I was trying to wrestle a Viking longboat into a Ford Focus?" Sergeant Craig McCabe, a solidly built man with a permanent look of mild amusement, looked up from his monitor. "Robert Junson's in the cells. Found him drunk in the market square at 3 this morning. He was singing." "Singing?" Jimmy raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess. Flower of Scotland?" "Worse. ABBA." Craig sighed. "Any news for the Up-Hellier committee?" "It's Justin. Kaiser Jarl thinks it'll be the best fire festival we've ever had." Jimmy smiled faintly. Up-Hellier was the lifeblood of the Shetland winter, a massive Viking fire festival that ended in the burning of a galley ship and a night of spectacular drinking. "Oh, I heard a rumor there's going to be a Lady Gaga squad this year. Big blonde wigs and meat dresses." Craig leaned in, lowering his voice conspiratorially. "You know anything about that?" "Well, you see, I do." Jimmy deadpanned. "But then, if I told you about it, I'd have to kill you." The banter was interrupted by the arrival of Duncan Hunter. Duncan was Cassie's biological father, a local businessman whose ambition was only matched by his knack for wearing expensive, deeply inappropriate Italian suits in the Shetland weather. He swaggered into the station as if he owned it. "Kicks off as usual at 9:45. Duncan announced to no one in particular, referring to the festival. "Your squad march along the esplanade to the ferry terminal. Fire to the galley at 8. Then drink will be taken. Copious amounts." Jimmy sighed. "Oi, Duncan, you coming to hand yourself in for crimes against fashion, or are you looking to sublet the holding cells and rent them out to tourists?" Duncan chuckled, unfazed. "Well, that's not a bad idea. Jimmy, property is booming. But no, I'm actually here checking if you still need an engine for that old tugboat your dad's fixing up. I think I might have found one for you over in Aberdeen." Jimmy crossed his arms. "And will there be a finder's fee involved in this miraculous discovery?" "Of course." Duncan grinned, flashing white teeth. "What am I? A charity?" Before Jimmy could retort, a sharp, choked noise drew his attention across the room. Detective Constable Sandy Wilson was standing by his desk, his hand gripping the telephone receiver so tightly his knuckles were white. The young officer's face had drained of all color, leaving his freckles standing out starkly against pale skin. He looked like he was going to be sick. Tea? Craig asked, oblivious, holding up a mug. Excuse me, Jimmy said, his police instincts instantly overriding the casual morning atmosphere. He crossed the room quickly. Sandy, what is it? Sandy stared at the wall, his eyes wide and unseeing. I'm sorry, Sandy, the voice on the other end of the line was saying, faintly audible in the quiet room. I didn't quite catch that. Jimmy gently placed a hand on the young man's shoulder. Sandy, talk to me. Sandy slowly turned his head. His breath was shallow. It's my grandmother's croft, over on Bresse. Mima? Jimmy asked softly. Sandy swallowed hard, tears suddenly welling in his eyes. I don't understand. My cousin Ronald just called. He was driving past. He said she's been shot. Sandy's voice broke into a jagged whisper. She's dead, sir. The air in the station seemed to vanish. The banter, the talk of festivals and boat engines evaporated, replaced by the chilling, heavy silence of murder. Chapter 2: Contamination. Jimmy Perez's mind shifted gears with the smooth, cold precision of a well-oiled machine. Grief was a luxury they did not have time for right now. Okay, Jimmy said, his voice low, steady, and utterly commanding. He took the phone from Sandy's trembling hand and placed it back on the cradle. Sandy, look at me. Sandy blinked, a tear tracking down his cheek. He looked impossibly young in that moment. What I want you to do, Jimmy instructed, making sure he maintained eye contact, grounding the young officer, is I want you to phone Billy on the landline and give him all the details. Every single thing Ronald told you. Do not leave anything out. Sandy nodded numbly. I'm going to get the inter-island ferry to Bresse, Jimmy continued, already shrugging his heavy coat back on. I'll be there in 20 minutes. You are going to go over there right now. You live closer to the ferry terminal. My dad, Sandy stammered. I need to tell my dad. Joseph. No, Jimmy said sharply. Your dad is a civilian. Right now, you are a police officer. You go to the croft. When you get there, you establish a perimeter. Do you understand me? Yes, sir. Jimmy leaned in closer, his tone softening just a fraction, but the steel remained. Is there any sign of a break-in at the croft? Did Ronald say? He said there is some broken glass. The front door. Do you know if the neighbors heard anything? I don't know. Her nearest neighbor is miles away. There's just Ronald. His croft is just up the road. He passed by on his way back from the night shift, and she's just over the ridge. He saw the broken glass from the track. Jimmy processed the information. Bresse was sparsely populated. A shotgun blast in the middle of a storm might go entirely unnoticed. Could it have been an accident? Do you think a shotgun blast up close? Sandy shook his head, a look of profound sickness washing over him. No. I mean, Mima owns a gun, an old double barrel. She keeps it in the hall cupboard. but she wouldn't. We don't know what happened yet. Jimmy interrupted gently. Now listen to me carefully. Sandy, you get to that croft. What's the mobile signal like up there? Terrible. Comes and goes. You'll need to go up the hill behind the house to get a bar. Right. Okay. This is what I want you to do. I want you to use your radio or phone the hospital in Lerwick if you have to use the Crofts landline. But try not to contaminate anything. Get them to send an ambulance. Set up a common approach path for the medics and the forensics team. Put up a windshield if the weather is destroying evidence. Jimmy paused, searching Sandy's face. The boy was hungover, Jimmy realized with a flash of irritation. He could smell the stale alcohol, something sweet and cloying. You think you can handle that? Jimmy asked, his tone demanding a positive answer. Yeah, Sandy sniffed, wiping his nose with the back of his sleeve. Can I cover her up? The wind is awful today. No, Jimmy said, his voice flat. I'm sorry, Sandy. We need photographs. The scene has to remain exactly as it was found. Look, I know you were close to her, but we multifunction here. You're a detective today, not a grandson. Sandy nodded, his jaw tightening. He grabbed his coat and rushed out the door. Jimmy turned to Craig, who was already on the phone, organizing the crime scene investigators. Suddenly, Jimmy's mobile rang in his pocket. He pulled it out. The caller ID flashed, Tosh. DC Allison Tosh McIntosh was his newest transfer from the mainland. Brilliant, slightly chaotic, and currently supposed to be off duty. Inspector, Tosh's voice came through, bright and alert. Did I wake you? No, sir. I've been up for ages, Jimmy replied, his mind already on the ferry. Well, look, I could lose my signal at any moment on this crossing. I want you to get on the ferry to Bresse. Mima Wilson has been found dead. Shot. Shot? Tosh sounded taken aback. Gun violence in Shetland was incredibly rare. Understood. I'm on my way. Get here fast, Tosh, Jimmy said, stepping out of the station into the biting wind. And bring your A game. This one is going to be messy. Chapter 3, Blood on the Heather. The ferry ride to Bresse took exactly 7 minutes, but to Jimmy Perez, it felt like hours. The gray waters of the Sound were choppy, the ferry rolling heavily over the swells. Jimmy stood on the open deck, ignoring the freezing spray, his eyes fixed on the approaching island. Bresse was a rugged, beautiful, and unforgiving place. Green hills rolled into dramatic cliffs that plummeted into the churning sea. Mima Wilson's croft sat isolated on a ridge, a lonely sentinel overlooking the water. By the time Jimmy's car navigated the narrow, winding single-track road and pulled up to the croft, the scene was already cordoned off with flapping blue and white police tape. The wind up here was vicious, tearing at Jimmy's clothes as he stepped out of the vehicle. He ducked under the tape and approached the small stone house. Sandy was standing near the front door, shivering violently, holding a digital camera. He looked 100 years older than he had that morning. Sandy, Jimmy said, his voice come amidst the roaring wind. Report. The gun hasn't been fired for years, sir, Sandy said, his teeth chattering. I checked the hall cupboard without touching anything. It's empty. Did Mima own this place? Jimmy asked, pulling on blue nitrile gloves. Yeah, the land's been in the family for generations. Outside, out the back. Sandy pointed a shaking finger. Has anyone called your dad? Yeah. And where's he now? At home, in Lerwick, Sandy said, looking down at his boots. I told him not to come down. Did not feel right breaking the news like that on the mobile. But I had to tell him to stay away. I was worried about contamination. No, you did the right thing, Jimmy reassured him. It was a heavy burden for a son to bear, telling his father that his mother had been murdered.